Hey there. What a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in the neighborhood. I was thinking of, is it Mr. Dressup?
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers. He was really ahead of his time. Mr. Rogers was a true ambassador of love, wasn't he? Yes, and ahead of his time in so many ways. Good morning, you guys. It's a kind of a beautiful, a bit crisp morning, and we're out on the backyard in the sunshine again. It's so quiet here today. It really is. I was thinking that is today the 9th of June? Today's the 9th of June. And tomorrow, if we should be here, in the morrow, will be the 10th of June. And the 10th of June is the kind of the 85 years since Bill Wilson, who was the co-founder of the Alcoholics Anonymous, and Dr. Bob, Bob's last name was Smith, wasn't it? Yeah. Met. And Bob was a doctor in Akron, Ohio, and who could not quit drinking. He just could not. And Bill Wilson had been sober, I'm going to say 3 or 6 months, and had been stayed sober by trying to help others to get recovery. And he discovered the through his friend Silkworth, Dr. Silkworth in New York, he realized the medical part of alcoholism, and because Silkworth ran a hospital in New York, the Downs Hospital. And so Bill understood that there was that alcoholics weren't just bad people or poor moral fiber. He realized that there was a medical part to it. There was a physical part to it and he explained that to Dr. Bob. Bob was sick and hungover and agreed to talk to Bill to appease his wife. And actually, when he went to see Bill, said he was only going to be there for like 10 minutes, and they spent 3 or 4 hours together that night because Bill knew the game of alcoholism and what it felt like, and how desperate we became, and how we believed that when we said, "That's it, I'm done," we believed it, and we were certain. And so Bill understood the game, and he understood Bob's pain. It was the first 12-step call, although the steps hadn't been written yet. 85 years ago today was Dr. Bob's first, his sober date. They'd met a couple of weeks before, and Bob had another drunk in him, another episode, a little more research to do. So tomorrow's a big day. I mean, only 85 years ago did this amazing adventure with recovery begin for the world. And then in 1939, the book was published with the steps in it. And from then, it's just been a steady growth. And a lot of it came out of, there was some, definitely some Christian foundation in it. And as they grew, they opened it up so that all beliefs would be welcome. And no matter what your concept of God was worked in the 12 steps. And they'd all been part of a group called the Oxford Group, or some of the foundation came out of that in the day, which was Christian-based. And so I'm grateful, saved my life, life of many in my family, to find this path. It was, a spiritual awakening path that was not exclusive. I didn't have to believe in a certain way. I didn't have to do certain rituals. Yes, there are certain things that need to be done on a daily basis to maintain, but it wasn't onerous. It wasn't, I didn't have to I was going to say submit, but that's not true either, because in a way I had to recognize that I was powerless. And the exciting thing about alcoholism and addiction is that if we continue to use, we will eventually get to that place of, of surrender. And it may kill us, and it does. It kills millions that don't find, recovery, that don't find the 12 steps, that look at it and just cannot surrender because they're so entrenched in their beliefs about themselves and their beliefs about the world. But what happens in the 12 steps that Bill and the first 100 in the fellowship created is a wholesale change, and it's funny, in the 12-step world we say we don't have to change one thing, that's everything. So and what happens, it takes us from living in fear and living in selfishness and living in trying to run the show all the time as a practicing alcoholic to literally having a new boss, a new director, a new employer, turning our will and our lives over to the care of that undescribable, unfathomable, unending power greater than ourselves. And that can start very, very small. I mean, sometimes it's the group. People, have such a real tough time with any idea of God. Sometimes they just make their group or their sponsor even their power greater than themselves to begin with. And eventually the promises in the program of an expanded state, fourth dimension, skyrocketed into fourth dimension. It talks about, so we're completely in an expanded state of connection and love. And living in the moment, I know that sounds cliche these days, but anything not in the moment isn't real. It's only an illusion. The future, we know, is not real. We have no idea. It's all imagined. And the past is the same. We don't even know what happened. Put 3 people in a room, an incident happens, and there's 3 different stories. Nobody knows what really happened. So the past is bullshit. But we're convinced often that we know. And so we live in that illusion. We can't differentiate the truth from the false. And often we're attached to that illusion with fear and guilt. And that's why we have the steps. The 4th step and the 5th step help us to see our part in the things that we feel resentment for, or fear about, or guilt about, or shame about. We see our part, and we're able to surrender and let go of what we think happened. We can even go in and make an amend, based on our perception of having misled or hurt somebody. In every situation, there is our part in it. So that's part of the recovery program. 85 years tomorrow. We'll talk about it a little bit more tomorrow. But I think that's so cool. So today's June the 9th, and we're going to read from the Thought for the Day. And hi, you guys. Nice to see everybody. It's funny because I'm sitting here with it's actually my iPhone on a tripod in the sun, and I cannot see the screen because the sun is so bright. I can't see really who's there, but it's nice to. There's Paul. Oh, I can see a little bit. Laura Lee, Kathy Lynn. Hi, you guys. I do feel like what's that guy? Not Mr. Dress Up. Mr. Rogers. Trevor's here with me. He's so gracious. He puts up with me every morning. He comes out and sits and listens to my ramblings. Okay, June the 9th. Says, Thought for the Day. We finally came to the bottom. Yes. We did not have to be financially broke, although many of us were. but we were spiritually bankrupt. We had a soul sickness, a revulsion against ourselves and against our way of living. Life had become impossible for us. We had to end it all or do something about it. That's what I'm talking about, you know. And for many of us who work with people in the addiction and alcoholic world, recognize that if a guy or a gal's not there, there's very little hope for them to, you know, it seems like Jesus said only drowning men can see us, and Leonard Cohen made that famous. But yeah, so we have to have this bottom. And sometimes people, you know, we have daughters and sons that we prop up. We try to keep them from hitting their bottom. We enable them, you know, and it makes it very difficult for them to really get their bottom, you know, to end up in a, you know, a shelter or whatever they have to do to realize that, holy shit, I am screwed, you know. And so I always encourage family to just, you know, let them sink and risk that you know, they'll awaken. Risk that they will see where they're at, and it's difficult sometimes to watch it, but I don't know of any other way. And then he says, "Am I glad I did something about it?" That's his question on the thought for the day. Meditation for the day. Faith is not seeing. Faith is not seeing, but believing. I love that. Somebody said to me years ago that the alcoholic says to God, "Show me and I'll believe." And God says, "You believe and I'll show you." So faith is not seeing, but believing. I am in a box of space and time and cannot see spacelessness or eternity. I'm in a box of space and time and cannot see spacelessness and eternity. But God is not within the shell of time and space. He is timeless and spaceless. He cannot be fully comprehended by my finite mind, by our finite minds. But we must try to make a union between our purposes, a union between our purposes and the purposes of God. By trying to merge our minds with the mind of God, a oneness of purpose results. Beautiful, eh? A oneness of purpose results. This oneness of purpose puts us in harmony with God and our fellow men. Evil comes from being in disharmony with God, and good comes from being in harmony with Him. Beautiful, beautiful. When we learn, you know, begin to experience this moment, is where the harmony is. Look, oh, it's so beautiful. Prayer for the day. I pray that I may be in harmony with God. I pray that I may get into the stream of goodness in the universe. What's interesting, you know, one of the things that's interesting is when we're in that flow, we stop judging others. When we're just as a signal that and somehow we're missing the flow, as if we're in judgment of others. We're in judgment of ourselves or judgment of others. They're, you know, that's a sneaky little way that the ego and the mind stays in control. It tells us that that person isn't doing it right, or this person isn't, you know, that something's wrong, you know, that this person is bad, and or that person is, you know, even super good. You know, we have a tendency to put people on pedestals sometimes, and it's the same. It separates us. We just are. Not right or wrong, not good or bad, just are. And we're in, you know, we have the opportunity to be in that fourth dimension of reality with our higher power and be on purpose, helping others, whatever we see as our purpose. That's it. Love you guys. I love doing this. And tomorrow, 85 years of the fellowship. Not the 12 steps, they didn't come for a while long after that, but the fellowship. There was no 12-step program. It was just Bill desperately trying to find another alcoholic so that he could stay sober. And we still do that. That's exactly what we do. The newcomer, in a way, serves us because he or she shows up and we get to give back, and then we get to see ourselves over and over again. So it's a never-ending circle. Okay, love you guys so much, and thank you for being with us today, and just for breathing and loving, and I have my little mantra. I like to commission you all as ambassadors of love, and as we go out into the world, this is a great time of change that's happening right now. Pay attention. There's amazing things happening, and it's all love-based. Amazing things that are happening, and we'll be skyrocketed into the fourth dimension and living happy, joyous, and free. Each one of us can live happy, joyous, and free, and be ambassadors of love. I love you guys. Talk to you soon.